Greetings and welcome there, people of YouTube. This is of course Essence of 40, and yes, again, I'm doing this at the beginning of the video rather than my normal style of playing them first and then coming in. And the reason is because I'm still on holiday. And there are also other reasons, such as the content that I will be responding today is from the most recent video that Hamza Tzortzis and Imran Hussein did a response to me. But it's not chronological order. It's not going from the start to the middle and then to the end, because I've divided it into 3 segments already. I haven't actually watched the last segment, but I've watched the first 2. The first segment is just more of the same. It's, the same attempts to attack my character and the way that I've conducted myself. You could hear that all again, or I could cut straight to the most important part, which is the apparent research basis for their claims. Because if you remember, Hamza Tzortzis made the claim that Dr. Oliver Petrovich, made these certain statements in a journal somewhere. I tried tracking that down, couldn't find it, etc. So now they're going to list examples where she supposedly did, and that's the important stuff. That's what I wanted to get out now, because that's also what Hamza's still going around lying about, and I still get messages in my inbox coming from his subscribers who can't be bothered to check his claims. They're sending me messages in, so are you going to apologise now that he's not just giving you one journal article, but he's given you this entire list of them, when the reality is a little more telling, actually. It is quite funny, but it's just irritating me the way that he's prancing around on Twitter when, as you're about to see, he's made a big mess. And I think he's made a mess thinking that I would not bother going through and reading every single one of his sources. So, with that noted, that's why I'm doing this now. I will not also be appearing in the video, so you won't see me in the video. It's because it's quicker for me to do, it's easier for me to do. I am still on my holiday, as I keep stressing, but still I get spam. It's starting to get irritating, so yes, let's check this basis. So again, this is the only time you always see me, in the beginning of the video, apart from the clips of me they do show, which is nice to note. They actually are showing clips of me. So yes, straight to it. Take care.
Now, the more important point that I really wanted to discuss was that the word lie has been used a lot by Peter against you, and he's also said in his most recent response, he actually spent quite a while doing it, and he put a link to another video regarding it, and he said, you made a point about Oliver Petrovich saying that, atheism is an acquired position, and
it's a learned psychology, and I said it was a false psychology.
And he said you basically lied, there's no papers, there's no research.
He said there's no journal, and there's no research, but he's wrong.
Let's play the clip.
At most, the ridicule aspects given off by me come at the conclusions of that specific segment when I've caught the person red-handed for lying, like you did with Dr. Oliver Petrovich. I don't care if you claim to have had interactions with her. You claimed she had published a journal with her research and that you had read it. You did that to me in person as well. You claimed that you had read the research and made your own decisions from it. In fact, why don't we just go back and play what you stated in public long after people have noted you are not telling the truth?
Take, for example, psychology. Olivera Petrovich is an academic and she studies the psychology of religion. And in the journal concerning the psychological studies in religion, and in the journal concerning the psychological studies in religion, she concludes that the natural psychological state of a human being is actually to believe in God. She says that atheism is a forced psychology on the human being. It's a forced psychology. Would you believe it? And they believe that we're the fundamentalists, right? And that's why they need the internet, they need aggressive speakers, and they need all these books just to try and infiltrate people's minds, because it's a forced psychology. That's the psychological evidence.
To see a further explanation of this, follow link 4 in the description down below. Fact is, there is no published journal, and there likely never will be. Just a published book set to come out next year. But even that is doubtful because it keeps being put back time after time. Now, for me to conclude from this that you are actively lying due to the fact that you have never seen said phantom journal or been able to produce it in the many times you were called out for the last 2 years, is not ridicule void of reason. you are giving this lecture to students, and that, as well as the rampant misrepresentation of social science, does anger me, and rightfully so.
So as you can see, he's called me a liar again. And that's what we mean by slander. You've basically said that I've intended deliberately to hide the truth or misrepresent the truth. That's slanderous in a way. And that's unfair and frankly immoral.
Okay, so why is it unfair? Let's clarify this point.
Well, I'm going to show you right now, actually, and on this really nice
Peter,
phone.
please pay attention to this point, because it seems like he's overlooking a lot of what we're saying in the.
Well,
in the
the journal is right here, actually, and the journal is called Key Psychological Issues in the Study of Religion, and this is a concluding part.
You want to say that a bit slow? I think you were a bit quick.
Key Psychological Issues in the Study of Religion.
That's it, Peter. Now you have it.
By Olivera Petrovich, and she says in a concluding paragraph the following: the possibility that some religious beliefs are universal, example, e.g., basic belief in a non-anthropomorphic God as creator of the natural world, seems to have a stronger empirical foundation than could be inferred from religious texts. Some of the initial findings of research into early religious understanding are consistent with other areas of developmental research, which suggests that there are cognitive universals in a number of domains of human knowledge. And she refers to other examples of work by R. Gelman, Spelk, Wellman, and S. Gelman. So from this perspective, I understood that to mean that atheism is a forced or a learned psychology. Maybe forced was the wrong word to use, but it was a rhetorical ploy to show that it's forced from the perspective that it's acquired later on in adult development. But the natural psychological state is a religious one, which means belief in a non-anthropomorphic God.
Good. So that's one.
But that's my interpretation of this journal, and the journal exists, by the way.
So pretty much you lied about what the journal actually said. Sure, there is interpretation, but when there is no evidence to be interpreted over, but simply an ending hypothesis, you are talking absolute rubbish. Note that this 12-page article discusses how psychology has been excluded from the academic study of religion, something I disagree with, but that's for another time. What is key here is that there is no real conclusion or evidence, just a few cited others which lack elaboration. She is specifically arguing that there should be more research, and even highlights a field in which she herself wishes to investigate, and then she would proceed to do so the next few years, i.e. the origins of religious belief, even though she would never publish a journal on her research. It even noted in the segment that they gave, the possibility seems to have suggests that. Being frank, this paper was designed to encourage study into this, not act as a study itself. Fact is, I knew this journal existed, but I excluded it from my search for a very key reason. That was where this all began. The first video I responded to by the London Dawah movement on this matter was titled God Exists Full Stop, and that video linked another video as its reference for Dr. Olivera Petrovich. In that video, Imran Hussein and another LDM member stated that she said atheism is an acquired position, and noted just after that said references would be in the description, as shown here.
There's really amazing, I think, another psychologist, Dr. Olivia Petrovich, and she says that atheism is an acquired position, right? Meaning your default position, the position that you're in before you change, is theism.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, she is actually an atheist. And also we're going to put the link for her.
All the references and the links
they're all going to be in the
description
videos,
box.
That video sadly no longer exists, yet thankfully I have the description in my archives referencing a 2008 Pathos blog by the Friendly Atheist. This in turn referenced another blog, The Age, which noted specifically that her research was preliminary, unpublished, and had only supposedly been given at a psychology conference in Sydney. That is why in my later work I paid little attention to any publishings prior 2008, as if she was only giving the preliminary research that year. I would not expect to find the end results the year prior, as was the study you had linked. That is correct. The original source for your claim was a 2008 conference talk about preliminary results, which I tore apart in my video responses. You then felt to try and portray to your subscribers that I was taking you to town dishonestly, that you would go back to the paper that put forward the hypothesis she had begun to research as the original basis for your claim and assert that as a conclusion. An unpublished preliminary means so little to me, so how much less do you think I'll weigh the prior hypothesis proposal? Fact is, Hamza, you know all this. The one video response you had failed to send to me before this entire thing happened defended Imran unquestionably. Now, back then I had not further investigated your sources or lack of them, but you knew that I knew you had utilized later references, a fact that could not have escaped you after having your memory jogged as I went over the very sources LDM had originally used, i.e. from the blog called The Age National. Now, had Hamza and Imran either A, been genuine about the sourcing, or B, been better liars, they simply would have noted that they had been wrong and changed their sources, whereupon I would have descended on Hamza over this idea of putting a hypothesis forward as a conclusion. But let us give you the benefit of the doubt. Let us assume that you had honestly changed sources at an earlier date to an earlier hypothesis proposal by Dr. Oliveira Petrovich and failed to mention this to me at any time between January 2014 and today. What does that mean? Well, first of all, if you are going to utilize the my interpretation argument, then in future avoid this little dishonest soundbite.
Take, for example, psychology. Oliveira Petrovich is an academic and she studies the psychology of religion. And in the journal concerning the psychological studies in religion, she concludes that the natural psychological state of a human being is actually to believe in God. She says that atheism is a forced psychology on the human being. It's a forced psychology. Would you believe it? And they believe that we're the fundamentalists, right? She
never said any of this. You may argue that you've explained to me later what you meant by this, but have you personally emailed every individual you spoke to at that conference and informed them? What about the other talks as far back as the one I attended last year? What you stated is still dishonest, whether or not you throw in your interpretation, as you specifically stated that she concluded. But let us return to the argument of my interpretation itself, which was the same offering Hamza gave me when visiting my university. Now, in this case, the phrase my interpretation attempts to act as a bridge between a proposed hypothesis and a research conclusion, i.e. possibility and actuality. So let us take this tool of his and display what damage his interpretation can bring him. Now, if we were to take Hamza himself and from there discuss the possibility of how he raped a child, we would be able to compile a list of unrelated criteria, i.e. his size, his mental ability, and his access to children, just like Oliveira Petrovich is doing with her citations. Now, in any rational method of conclusion, this possibility would not be enough to conclude actuality. That would require evidence. But if instead we threw all that protocol out of the window and instead use the magical phrase my interpretation, we reach a conclusion that may anger some people, Hamza himself included. That is why we need evidence, just like when facing the possibility that I slandered you or the possibility that the universe was jump-started by God. Possibility is not actuality. We need that thing you appear to find mystical, i.e. evidence. But let us recap all the possibilities of what you are attempting to do here. You could simply be lying, having changed your sources deceptively as an attempt to make me look bad. If this is the case, you are a moron, as I have everything on record. But maybe you had been genuine. Maybe I did give you too much credit in thinking that not even you were low enough to conflate proposed hypothesis and research conclusion. As you note, I mentioned research. But even if you had made this monumental mistake, you were still lying about what Dr. Olivera Petrovich had said herself, in stating she said and she concluded. That is not interpretation, that is a solid claim about what someone else has stated. So on one side, you are a liar who screwed up thoroughly, and on the other, you screwed up thoroughly as well as lied. Those are your current options. Either way, you are an utter fool without equal as well as a liar.
But what he did, actually you can see what he did.
Also, I searched your apparent quote on Google and turned up nothing. So I went to her department on the Oxford University website and searched for the term belief, God and religion under her name. The first returned 0 results. The second returned 1 result from 2002, which was merely a collection of 28 articles by clergymen, and the last returned a result which was on the difficulties of studying religion. I then did the same on the research page for her department. Nowhere did I find any published article around what you claim, and I invite anyone to check this out for themselves. Now, when I finally did manage to track down the emergence of this claim, it all went back to the article on the Age National, which reported apparent research given at the University of Western Sydney conference.
See, so what he did, he basically types in her website, in the search function, atheism and something else, and he can't find it in the title, therefore there is no research. I'm thinking, this is crazy. When does the title always represent the research?
Don't judge the paper by the title, basically.
Don't judge the paper by the title. Imagine going to the origin of species and saying, oh, that's got nothing to do with evolution.
Yeah.
Or actually typing in atheism in the book The God Delusion and saying, okay, well the title doesn't mention atheism, so the God delusion has nothing to do with atheism.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous research method to employ, which is, I'm going to find out the content of a paper by just looking at the title.
So you failed to give an accurate citation, a good one. Therefore, I searched for your quotes on Google as well as some general terms for anything similar and turned up one relevant result, which I was then going into towards the end of that clip that you just showed. But I also checked her publishing list and searched keywords individually. Now, when we search for things on YouTube, you do know that titles are not the only relevant aspect. Videos have something known as keywords designed to help. Funnily enough, this is also an academic practice. If we use your previous example, near the top of the report, you will find that near the beginning there is a box filled with keywords. These are words that are typically incorporated into search algorithms for both YouTube videos and academic journals. The former exists to help people find more relevant videos. The latter exists to aid the scientific community when searching for data or previous journals which may have been titled strangely. So not only are you going to set out to insult me for attempting to do what was your responsibility in the first place and you failed to do, mocking me for checking numerous channels which did bring up the result you just utilized, but I had excluded it personally because it was not a research paper but one proposing more research in itself, as well as discussing the challenge faced in doing so. but you're also going to display your total ineptitude in understanding scientific journals and the basics of key words. Well, you certainly have.
I mean, that's not the only one.
Well, it's not the only one. It's definitely not the only one. There's more. And for example, we said the key psychological issues in the study of religion. We have Science Points to God, which was published in 2002.
You mean her chapter in the non-peer-reviewed book titled One Incarnate Truth, Christianity's Answer to Spiritual Chaos. Now, I do not know if you knew this, but a book, certainly one by Christian clergy and authors seeking to shoehorn God into science by retrofitting, certainly is not a peer-reviewed research journal. I'd like to see what part specifically you are citing. You can't just throw random chapter titles from a book. What happens to "Don't judge it by its title"?
We have in the International Journal of Psychology by Petrovich, it's called Japanese Children's Explanation of the Origins of Natural Objects, Some Comparisons with UK Children.
Well now, this is embarrassing. Why? Well, Dr. Oliver Petrovich's Oxford page notes this as a journal article, but in reality, when I decided to check it, it was merely a keynote or abstract describing a lecture in 2000 given at the International Congress of Psychology about research around 102 Japanese children. The later lecture, given in Sydney in 2008, would apparently contain over 400, so we can see the progression. But most importantly, this is not a published journal article, even though Petrovich's own website suggests so. It's a description of a lecture listed under socio-cultural perspectives on development. I mean, it can only be this journal entry, as whilst there is a normal journal that runs beside this one, its last page for the year is 301. Meanwhile, Dr. Oliver Petrovich's supposed one-page article exists on page 304. Ergo, it could only be referencing the abstract. What is even funnier is that you sent this to me on Twitter claiming it to be relevant. Why? Why would you do that personally when you obviously haven't read it or do not understand that this is not a study? I cannot see the methodology, I cannot see the operationalization, I cannot check the validity, etc. It's not even a page long. Even the Twitter post you sent notes from page 304 to 304. That should have instantly set off red flags, but it didn't. It's really, really funny.
Yep. She has in the Journal of Psychological Reports 1999, Preschool Children's Understanding of the Dichotomy Between the Natural and Artificial.
Did you even read the abstract of the study, let alone the entire thing? It investigates how children were able to dichotomize designed objects from non-designed objects in a two-category system, as well as cross-examining them with other studies that had a range of natural categories and a singular artificial one. They found that children had no issue defining things such as plants and animals as not designed, whilst artifacts were designed. How does that support the case that children have an innate belief in a divine creator? How?
We also have in the International Journal of Psychology, Childhood Artificialism and Early Ontological Knowledge.
You mean another lecture given in 1992 that only exists as an abstract inside of a journal discussing the lectures from this year at the same annual conference as the previous one? Oh yes, I'm impressed to learn that 23 years ago you were attending psychology conferences. Really impressed. The talk also appears to be practically the same thing as the previous example. It's not relevant.
We also have The Philosophy of Moral Development, Volume 1, Petrovich, 1982, in the British Journal of Psychology.
You really are just citing any old rubbish to make yourselves look impressive. I mean, moral development. What on earth does moral development have to do with an innate belief in a deity? Do tell me. Fact is, I could go on to look further at these references you throw out as evidence that Petrovich has published research proving children have an innate belief in God, as you had listed all of these as evidence from the first one you offered in this video clip.
I mean, that's not the only one.
Well, it's not the only one. It's definitely not the only one. There's more. And for example, we said the key psychological issues in the study of religion. We have Science Points to God, which was published in 2002. We have in the International Journal of Psychology by Petrovich, it's called Japanese Children's Explanation of the Origins of Natural Objects, some comparisons with UK children.
Yep.
She has in the Journal of Psychological Reports, 1999, Preschool Children's Understanding of the Dichotomy Between the Natural and the Artificial. We also have in the International Journal of Psychology, Childhood Artificialism and Early Ontological Knowledge. We also have The Philosophy of Moral Development, Volume 1, Petrovich, 1982, in the British Journal of Psychology, and there's a few more.
And just before we move on, Peter, this was the point. If you had sincerely asked Hamza...
No, there's more.
Okay,
Actually,
there's a lot more. Just before the icing on the cake, Peter, do you see the point? If you were sincere and asked him, he would have given you these resources.
Exactly.
And you would have made a fool of yourself.
Instead of searching and not doing good research, and then calling me a liar.
Research.
Now, I did extend it there a little at the end, as it bolsters what I'm about to say. Here is the thing. I approached them about this and asked whether he had read the entire list, and Hamza stated no. From this, my demand is to know why on earth they cited these pieces as further evidence for their claims. Now, he argues that this once again misrepresents him. But we have what the video says all too clearly. They tell me to listen. They list one which I did not show again as the section was long, but see the intro of this video to see that again. And then they continue. They proceed to add these extra titles as evidence for their claims. To claim one thing in your video, which I, by the way, receive spam over from your subscribers who do not bother to check your claims, demanding that I give you an apology because I got a tirade of journals, not just one, is rubbish. I do not respect that at all. I do not respect you for pulling this cheap trick. This really caused me to flip out. I mean, your dishonest shift does strike me. The fact is that you personally even sent one of these sources to me again, i.e. the 2000 lecture abstract, as if it were a whole journal, and then acted confused and then tried to say, well, it just adds to credibility of this if she's giving a talk on it and they include it in a journal, when no, they do this for every talk at the conference. You didn't seem to realize that it was less than a page long after your extensive reading. This is a bloody joke. You are a bloody joke. You are a liar, a cheat, a deceiver, as well as a fool without equal. A good liar would at least bother to ensure that their cover story works, whilst yours falls apart in a single glance. You are undoubtedly a liar. That is a fact I would now wager my life upon. Fact is that as discussion on Twitter broke down when I questioned whether you had read all your sources, and by the way I use the word discussion lightly as it takes several attempts to get you to address a direct yes-no question, you sent me a link to one of your articles from 2014. Note, you had not only sent this to me personally, as if it were still an active basis for your claims, but when I investigated it, I found no edits, no comments on the validity of your sources which had been brought into question. Now, why is this important? Well, for Petrovich, he uses two sources. The latter is the article stressing the need for further research and includes the ending hypothesis, which starts with the phrase possibility, but also includes the phrases seems to have and suggests that, a highly invalid basis to make a conclusion from. But what's even funnier is that his first source, the one which he states she concludes that the belief in a non-anthropomorphic God is the natural state of a human being, atheism is a learned psychology, theism is our natural state, comes from the source of the Age National article, the one I found in searching for his claims and thoroughly took to town. The searches he mocked me for that turned up exactly what he had used as evidence for his claim. The fact is that this research does not exist in a published journal for me to review for sample size, for representation, reliability in its method, and the validity of its claims. Ergo, it is just junk. I do not care about Petrovich's personal opinion. I care about what her apparent research shows. So the fact is that Hamza seems to believe that any invalid reference shall do, whether it's a blog post, a book, or a lecture abstract. He could not seem to wrap his mind around the fact that I do not care about what she believes, I care about what her work can show. So from the article, we only have a debunked source, and the second one shared at the start of this video only held an ending hypothesis which Hamza declared a valid conclusion based off interpretation. Then we have a chapter in a book, a lecture abstract, and irrelevant research where children dichotomize things easily into artificial and natural, where they defined such things as animals as not designed, another lecture abstract on the similar topic, and a paper on moral development, by which point I just given up in what you were doing here, listing invalid resources for your claims. You claimed journals originally. I expected journals. I demanded journals. You listed what you claimed as journals. Ergo, you lied either about them being journal articles or about what they had stated. Now going back to the only vaguely relevant journal, i.e. Key Psychological Issues in the Study of Religion, she does make reference to other academics in her article highlighting the need for further study into religious belief on such things as origins. But one familiar face makes an appearance, and that is Justin L. Barrett, a person who has stated on record that religious belief is not in any way innate, but rather the way a child's mind works makes them susceptible to said belief. So either this means that Dr. Oliver Petrovich has made the same mistake Hamza has made repeatedly, or, more likely, she is using examples which simply suggest that early belief in God exists, which would strengthen the basis for her request to do further research into whether this belief is social or biological in origin, as was the entire purpose of her paper. So from clearing out all your mess once again, reading every reference you made specifically to bolster your claim and yet simply lied about dishonestly in having either never read them or simply lied about their content, going as far as sending me one of the references once again, which was the lecture abstract, I hope I have displayed that no, you never did have a valid source to make your claims from. Ergo, my statement that you are a liar is not only substantiated, but bolstered by this attempt to pull a fast one on me, something which many of your subscribers have clearly fallen for, yet I did not. But why lie, Hamza? You know from how quick I can be to respond that I am tenacious to my code of ethics, which includes checking out the sources of your claims so that I would not merely be lied to. You mock me for doing this, even when you fail to provide a source, something which is your responsibility. You simply lie about what others have said, making assertions on she said and she concluded, even though she did no such thing, and your idea of interpretation does not defend you from that being a lie. Yet I am still here, putting up with all your rubbish and willing to discuss. Now, I've watched the opening to your video and I've already divided it into segments that I'll respond to, but I haven't watched the ending yet. I am supposed to be on holiday, hence my slow breakdown of everything you have said. But this was a specific segment that needed immediate attention. So I hope you can forgive me for mixing up the order of these responses. The fact is that after these 3 videos, due to the way that discourse from your arena has devolved, I will be moving back to the arguments presented on your channel. I am going to remove myself from this personal aspect because I have displayed without any doubt that you and Imran are dishonest characters, big-headed in your egos with nothing to show for it. Now, your video title demanded an apology from me, yet all I have found is further dishonesty. I think you should be apologizing not to me, but to your own subscribers for deliberately misleading them, as they are the ones who suffer from the ignorance you inflict upon them. Next time, show a little more respect to your subscribers.